All right, so welcome everyone. We are here with Peak Integrative Medicine, and we are going to talk about mold tonight. So this is in the Deeper Dive with Dr. T series, and I think these mold meetings might become a regular occurrence, if not every month, maybe every other month, because we have a lot of our members, a lot of our patients that are dealing with mycotoxin related illness. And tonight we're going to hear from Laura, who's been working with us for a while now. She's going to share her very long story and all the things she's been through and all the times she was dismissed and all the failed treatments. And but don't worry, there's I think a happy ending that we're going to see here. So Laura, I'm going to toss this right over to you. I know you have a slide deck, and let me make you a co-host here so you can present that. But yeah, do you want to jump right into the slide deck, or do you have anything to say first before you get that fired up?
No, I can try and jump right in. I'm just hoping I have permissions to share and it's going to work beautifully.
All right, so share if you can. And please, anyone out there watching now live, ask questions in the chat, raise your hand. That way we can make sure we answer all of your questions and the stuff that you're interested about. And then, depending on how quickly this goes, we'll have plenty of time at the end. You can ask Laura questions about her journey. You could ask just general questions about mold and mycotoxin illness, and maybe questions that you have about your home or your what you've been experiencing, and we can be sure to answer those questions. And if there's anything personal, I would say maybe we'll hold up a few minutes at the end. I'll stop recording, and then you can ask those or ask them in the chat one-on-one. So if you go to the chat and type in new chat, then you can choose and send it just to me. That way, everyone that's on the call won't be seeing who's asking that question. If you care about that. If you don't care, then you can go ahead and ask in the general chat. So without further ado, go ahead, Laura, take it away, and I may jump in and interject or ask some questions. But yeah, tell us about your journey.
Uh, Okay, I don't know if the second image is showing up here. Hopefully, I'm not going to lose a bunch of images. It's not showing up for me.
Okay.
Um, but otherwise, that would be a picture of me looking much better now. So I'm Laura Schaefer. I live in Schuylkill Haven. Married to my husband, Corey. We have 4 kids together. I own my own business, which is called Venom Co. I do all of Peak's design work, actually. Um, and I've been chronically ill for the better part of 10 years, I would say. Um, probably, probably the worst has been the last couple of years, but slow systemic decline. And of course, it is mold that we found out now, but we'll start at the beginning. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose all my pictures, I think. I don't know why. That would
That's okay. We'll do it again next time and use the same slide deck.
It's fine. So things started for me. Now it took obviously a while for me to piece this all together, but back in the summer of 2014, I had moved to Schuylkill Haven. I grew up in Berks County. So I headed up this way because rent was cheaper and ended up in a 100-year-old farmhouse because I thought that sounded really quaint and nice. But it did have, I know for sure it had issues with the basement, like standing water. It was almost like a dirt floor basement, and there's like literally standing water, and that's where I did my laundry. And I can only imagine what was lurking there. And I do distinctly remember there being visible mold in the bathroom that I like cleaned over and over again. And I remember like talking to some friends about it, like, is this normal? Do people deal with this? Is this like what being adult is like? Because this is like, I'm fresh out of college. This is my first place on my own. Um, but obviously didn't connect the dots at all there. And within a couple of months of living there, that's when things like took a turn in my health. I had always been, I don't know, fine, nothing really to speak of going on with my health. And suddenly I started getting constant UTI like pains, but I would be tested urinalysis and there would be no infection present. So eventually this would put me in the bucket of like interstitial cystitis. But at this point, it was just a mystery why I continued to have these recurring symptoms.
And you said it took like less than a year to start experiencing
Oh, this was
that.
within like probably within the first 3 months, I would say. Um, and then because I really only lived in this house for like a year total, and things progressed really quickly. Um, Heavy painful periods, I was getting like just sinus infections and like fevers and just really, really run down, which was not normal for me. But, I did recently start a new job and I was like a young single mom. So this is all things that you just explain away, like, oh, I'm getting sick more often because I have a young child. And oh, I don't know. I ended up stopping being able to tolerate alcohol, which not the worst thing, I probably needed to curb that habit anyway at that point, but it was something unusual for me. Um, I used to be able to drink 4 or 6 drinks in a night, be good. I couldn't even drink one drink anymore. It just became like intolerable to my body. I would become s- physically sick if I drank alcohol once I was living in this house. Um, and I also got, it's hard to describe. I would get like my eyes looked just bad, like very dry underneath them and like sort of sore. Hard to describe, just like weird things like that I had never experienced my entire life. And then I started experiencing all these things. And like I did go to the doctor, my primary care provider, and it was always just like, I don't know, you're just getting sick more often. And I don't know, you don't have a UTI, but here, we'll throw some antibiotics at you. Um, in case it can kill whatever's in there. So I'm sure that just added insult to injury and did not help my gut health or anything else to set me up to be more resilient. It probably had the opposite effect.
So
Um,
within the first 3 to 6 months, you were showing signs of poor detoxification. So the alcohol is probably, I'd have to look at the diagrams again, but it's probably the same type of enzymes that were trying to detox the mycotoxins out of your system. So that affected your liver's ability to be able to detox out that alcohol. And then you're quickly showing signs of immune dysfunction too, because you were getting sick a lot more often. Your general inflammation is probably what led to a lot of those symptoms that you were having. So yeah, pretty quickly.
yep, it came on quick, but then I ended up moving out. I had met my husband and moved in with him quickly. And I would say when I moved in with him, I would say my symptoms may have like eased a little bit, but I also had really worked hard to like modify my diet and my lifestyle to sort of accommodate these new issues I was facing. Like I just completely gave up drinking for the most part because it was fine. I was better off without it anyway, and adjusted my diet, really focused on only drinking water, like no coffee, no iced tea, none of the extra stuff because I thought that would help my bladder and like the UTI like symptoms I was experiencing. So just a lot of this will be like the theme through my story. I was constantly just like trying to adjust what I was doing to accommodate these new weird things with my health and just keep pushing forward because I didn't really have time to be sick. Um, so yeah, and again, now, most people know when you live in mold, you shouldn't be bringing all your stuff with you to a new house. But again, didn't know that was an issue. So likely I brought sofas with me to my husband's house and all kinds of stuff. So um, sure, I just tracked mycotoxins right along with me to the next place. And I know his home, our first home that we had together, then I I can't say for sure, right? Because I never tested these places, but I would say same thing, like very sort of like a dirt floor basement, very should have had a dehumidifier and we didn't because we were young and stupid. And yeah, I'm sure that was not a good environment for me either. But anyway, um, through the next couple of years, I had like back-to-back pregnancies, and it's like each time I was pregnant, each pregnancy would become harder than the last. I would be more sick, like sicker longer with just morning sickness and stuff. And each baby got smaller. My recovery period was just worse each time. I just sort of felt like my body was losing resilience. Um, and I did start experiencing like subtle GI changes. Like I would notice, if I ate like a tomato-based sauce, that wouldn't really sit right with me. So I just, started omitting eating certain things and just always trying to accommodate these new sensitivities. And But life is 100 miles an hour when you have kids and you're young and you're trying to start your own business and you're doing all these things. So I was constantly just explaining things away. It becomes very muddied when you're having kids, pregnancies, your hormones. You just are like, oh, my hormones are messed up because of breastfeeding or this or that. You explain everything away. Um, so that's sort of what I did for most of those years there. Um, I ended up moving to our current home, which we now live on like a small farm. And again, we just moved everything with us here. And I did note here, I don't know if this is relevant or not. Well, it is obviously later and we'll find out, but I remember having an embedded tick bite behind my knee just before we moved here. So I don't know how that played into things, but and right when we moved here, we started acquiring like farm animals and chickens and goats and all of the things. And um like we have a really old, now I know it's moldy barn, um, just outbuildings that are just not conducive to a mold-free lifestyle. So all of these things on this beautiful little farmette that we bought were not the best thing for someone with my issues, but I didn't know it at the time. So moved here, thought it was going to be so magical. And then I started really getting weird things happening that I had never had before. One thing throughout my whole story, like my worst thing I would say that I've dealt with, my GI system has been hit extremely hard. So after we moved here, within 6 months or so of moving here, I started having rectal bleeding. Um, and it's not just like a little bit on the toilet paper when you wait. This is like a lot. A lot is coming out. Very scary symptom to have. Um, and I started having other little weird things too, like fibrocystic breasts. Had never had that before, and signs of estrogen dominance. And I did immediately go to gastroenterology because obviously this is a very scary symptom to have, especially when I've never experienced this my whole life. And I did go through a colonoscopy, which they said was unremarkable. They couldn't find anything to explain it. He did say, just from having children and that process, you probably just have like a small internal hemorrhoid that flares up. But I was like, that doesn't sit right with me. That never sat right with me. I just, I, but what else did I have to go off of, right? We ruled out like the big scary things. So I just thought, okay, we'll just try to modify my diet. And I think around this time is probably when I started connecting with you guys at Peak and trying to dig into other ways to help manage some of my GI stuff. Um, and I know we had done with Peak, I think like GI mapping and just trying to do probiotics and different things to help my gut health. And if I feel like I would have like maybe temporary relief, but nothing ever stuck and really helped me like long term. I continue to have this weird continued decline despite all of my best efforts, it was very frustrating because I've always been very, very disciplined. Um, if you tell me I should stop eating whatever, I'm done. I don't need to do it another day. Like I'm just so committed to doing whatever I need to for my health and to be so committed and doing all of the things I possibly could and still be declining was kind of scary, especially since these symptoms were so significant.
Yeah,
Um,
and from our side of things too, it was puzzling because especially with like the GI stuff, like that was what I focused on a lot early on in my functional medicine career. And it usually followed a pretty consistent pattern. We would do the testing, we would identify the organisms that were problem, we'd give the person something to kill off those organisms, and also rebuild their healthy gut flora, and then build up the immune system in the gut. But in your case, I mean, partially it was I thought it was because of the pregnancies we couldn't give you the stuff to kill off the bad stuff. So I know that delayed things for a while, but you were yeah, and it kind of wax and wane too. Like it wasn't always bad, and then you'd have these flares kind of out of nowhere for no reason. Well, we now kind of suspect what the reasons were, but yeah, it was definitely puzzling from our side as well because other than And almost all of these people had ended up like once we got the right testing done, found out it was mycotoxin related. But yeah, I know yours was particularly frustrating for me. I can
Yeah.
imagine how it was for you.
It's always been frustrating, but like, yeah, I was always like pregnant breastfeeding. There's always something going on. So it was hard to, I don't know, keep a steady pace with everything. Um, but we tried our best. And I remember too, I don't know if it was Liana or Kristen who I'd be talking to, and they'd be like, things don't like y- I would have things off in my gut stuff, like a little off, but nothing that would be like, oh,
Right.
this is probably it. Like you are really out of whack. Nothing was ever that horrible. So it was like it just didn't match up with the severity of my symptoms. So that was frustrating. But
Even your food allergy testing wasn't bad. Like what we expect. I expected it to light up like a Christmas tree on the test results. But I mean, you had like the usual like common things. Like I think it's probably like gluten and some grain related stuff. But yeah, there again, it wasn't horrible to explain all the issues that you were having.
yep, that's been the story of my life. Um, but yeah, I ended up continuing to have like deeper issues. The rectal bleeding was the bad one. And it eventually it really became, I would get full blown, it would feel like a flare. Like I started suspecting Crohn's, colitis, something like that because of the severity of the intestinal pain that I would have. It was always left-sided, localized. It was like the same thing every single time. And just I knew something was at play, but we just could not figure out what it was. Um, and then I did feel like things really started escalating. Now, when I look back, I can piece this timeline together, but I did not realize this at the time at all, obviously, otherwise things would have went differently. But I did have a family member that bought a 200-year-old historic home and decide to be renovating it and stuff. And that was just like a big thing in our extended family. Like we were all going over there and helping them. And her and I shared a nanny. So I was over there a lot, like multiple days a week, helping her paint, helping her renovate, helping move things in and out of the barn.
So
And
has any of that family had issues?
um,
Something I never asked.
n- not that, not, I don't think so. It's hard to say.
And we'll talk about why that might be in a moment. But yeah,
Yeah.
so go ahead.
Yeah, my system was definitely primed. So whether, I don't know if it's a major issue there or just a more minor one, and I'm just very sensitive, but yeah, I did start, and I can now look back and remember, okay, that day I moved them in, I remember calling my mom and being like, I don't know why I'm bleeding so bad today. Like, is it like something because of like physically moving boxes? Like, am I just like putting too much strain on my body that it would cause bleeding? Well, now, no, that's not the reason that it was, but there's just all these things I put together in my mind now. But around this time of being over there a lot, I started having a resurgence of SVT episodes, which is supraventricular tachycardia. And it's like a hard thing. I had it when I was really, really young. I think it hit around the time I was like going through puberty. And then it like settled down, and I literally had nothing for probably 10 to 15 years. And then all of a sudden, I started having SVT episodes again, which is basically my heart snaps into a bad rhythm. I'll go from like 80 beats per minute up to like 190, 200 in a split second, and it can get stuck like that. I had to go to the ER for that a few times, and um, just that was happening more often, just heart palpitations, the severe intestinal pain, rectal bleeding, and air hunger, sensitivities. I was starting to feel an onset of like neurological stuff, like just severe brain fog. I think I've always dealt with brain fog. It's sad to say, but like I think I've had it for so long that I just almost, and I know I did myself a disservice even with you guys. Like I don't think I articulated very well how severe my issues were because I was used to living with him for so long that I always just thought of if I could just like get the bleeding under control and the GI stuff, like I can just live with the rest of this because I've been living with it for a while. Um, so if I could go back, I would do that differently. I would really just lay it all out there and try and name every single thing, but you just start to feel a little crazy because I did see GI. I've seen multiple doctors and no one, it's like your labs are beautiful. I don't know, there's nothing wrong with you. So it's like, I don't know, maybe it's me. Maybe like this is like a normal thing that I'm like, so yeah, that was that was my experience during that time. And then I ended up getting pregnant with my last baby, and that um was very difficult. That was my worst pregnancy. I was so sick the whole time. Um, severe morning sickness, air hunger. They actually prescribed me an inhaler because that was like unexplained. Had no real reason. They didn't really know why that was happening, but I just felt like I couldn't breathe all the time. Not real. This is like before I was huge. This is like I'm probably only 20 weeks, so it's not a physical thing. It was just I could not. I just felt like I couldn't breathe. Breaths
Yeah.
weren't satisfying. Just weird things. Um, but during this time, we actually built an addition on our home because of being pregnant. We needed more room. And so we ended up, we had furniture stored in our barn because our house was so little that we bought. So we put a lot of stuff in our barn, our moldy barn. Um, and actually now it makes it like gives me the shivers. I like did this stuff while I was pregnant. I like pulled furniture out of the barn with the help of my husband, and I literally remember this stuff being coated in like white colorful molds, and I was just like wiping it off with paper towels because I don't know. I didn't know mold was bad. I just obviously you don't want it on your stuff, but I didn't know it was something I should be using like PPE to handle,
Right.
or just throwing the furniture out, frankly. But it was like the backs of dressers, I had to rip them off and just throw them out. But a lot of it was really nice, solid wood furniture that I was like, I want to keep this stuff. We did have to throw out some of it because it was literally like disintegrating, but some of it I kept and moved into my house. And this is like around the time where I can't breathe and I passed out while I'm pregnant and I had to go to the hospital. And then they found out that my hemoglobin was so low and then I needed iron infusions and just it was a very dramatic like end to my pregnancy and I actually ended up very sick too, just like terrible chest infection at the end of my pregnancy. It actually lasted for weeks, went into when I actually had him and I was like going through labor and delivery, I was like coughing every 10 minutes, this horrible cough. They were like afraid I had COVID. All the nurses were like scared of me because I sounded terrible, but it wasn't COVID. I tested negative for it. It was just, I don't know. Obviously, now I look back and I'm like, this is all really lining up. And yeah, that was I had a terrible delivery. I hemorrhaged after delivery. 1.8 liters of blood. I had to have emergency surgery. It was just a very traumatic end to my pregnancy. And after that, I really just felt like I fell off a cliff. That was obviously very hard on my body to go through the hemorrhage and everything and just try to bounce back from that. But then all these other things that had led up to it too, and the chest infection and all these things, my body really, I'm finally recovering now, but I felt like I never recovered since that point. That was a major trauma to my body and my emotional state that really I just was done after that. Um, I just had much more frequent GI bleeding, neurological symptoms, joint pain. I started getting cyclical fevers, all kinds of crazy, crazy stuff. So the next like year and a half was really, I was like, I'm so sure I have to have IBD, Crohn's or colitis or something. I went back to GI again, even though they had told me, we don't need to see you for 10 years because your colon was so beautiful. I was like, I'm back. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. Something is seriously wrong. Like I just knew something was so wrong. Um, I did do a second colonoscopy. I had multiple MRIs, multiple CT scans. I ended up doing a pill cam. Um, no, nothing really came of all of that. They would say that they thought I likely had UC or Crohn's, but they're like, it's not showing up clinically yet, so we just have to wait till you get worse. And I'm like, I'm already so bad. How could this be possible? Um, so yeah, it was just getting so the neurological state too was like every time it was like this cyclical thing. I would get hit with this terrible pain, have rectal bleeding, and feel like I was poisoned. I would feel like out of my body. Like couldn't form sentences right. I just didn't even want to talk. I would have insomnia, just so many weird things. Um, it, it was just really bad. And I know you guys were concerned too that you encouraged me to go back to gastroenterology because the stuff was so severe and it was scary. You know, my fear was always that they were missing something really bad. That's like I was kept up at night crying so many nights, just like I'm sure that it's like colon cancer and they just haven't been able to find it. Maybe it was so small or in a weird spot and they're just missing it because I was that sick. I just felt something was so horribly wrong in my gut. Um, but nothing played out there. They're telling me they can't find anything, and I just have to wait till I get even worse for hopefully something to show up. Um, So, you know, there's some point at the end of 2023 going into 2024 where I'm like obviously Googling and on Reddit and all just scouring to try and find someone that has similar symptoms as me. And I stumbled upon endometriosis and I was like, wow, all these women are talking about having rectal bleeding as a result of endometriosis infiltrating their bowel. So maybe this could explain this. This is something no one has ever said to me before, and it seems like a plausible cause. And I have had really bad periods, and there's other things that sort of make it seem like maybe this could be a fit. It's an avenue I haven't gone down, so let me explore this.
And,
And then,
and real quick, for those unfamiliar with endometriosis, it's basically when your uterine lining grows outside of the uterus around the organs, in this case, the intestines. And I remember, I think I asked you, are you sure you were going for surgery? And the specialist, she was quite certain it had to be this, I think at the time, right?
yep, yep, she was, and this is like I paid out of pocket for this because of how sick I was like, if I'm going to do this, I am going to the best specialist. If this is what's causing this, I want the best of the best. I need this to be handled so I can actually get better. I didn't just, not to knock the Schuylkill County doctors, love them, but I felt like I needed someone very experienced. I traveled out of state to do this. She did send me for like MRIs and stuff before, and she felt like she could say with certainty that I had adenomyosis, which is where the endometrium grows into the muscle of your uterus. It's like a thing that can cause it can cause a lot of pain and heavy bleeding, which I had had for years. Um, so that seemed like a plausible thing. And then she felt like she saw it's hard to see on an MRI. They will say that she did acknowledge that. It's tough to say for sure, but I do feel like I can see signs of bowel endometriosis. So, like, I'm very certain that this is going to help you majorly. And she did suggest doing a hysterectomy. That's like, they say that's the only cure for adenomyosis. Um, and I was pretty, I mean, I was so sick that I couldn't even fathom having another child in the state I was in. So it was just like, I mean, I guess like if I was so desperate for relief of any kind, like, okay, if I just get a hysterectomy, maybe that's just going to take the edge off of something. Maybe it will just make my life a little more bearable. Um, so I agreed to do that. And then going through that, all of my biopsies did show endometriosis. So I did have it. It was not infiltrating my bowel at all. Not at all. So that was really defeating to wake up from that and have her say, sorry, it was not infiltrating your bowel at all. So like, I'm not sure what's causing the bleeding, but it wasn't that. It's
And I
like,
think this first time I'm seeing I don't know if I was aware of the appendectomy. So did they find
yeah,
anything there, or was it just like, hey, while we're in here, might as well?
I think it was a hey while we're in there because she said going into it. And again, this is like me. And you do the same type of prep you would for a colonoscopy. So I was so weak and like exhausted and out of it. So going into the surgery, this isn't something we discussed in the weeks prior. This is like literally they're about to roll me back. And she's like, a lot of the times I'll just do an appendectomy too because you have so much GI pain. Like if it looks inflamed at all, we could just get it out of there. And I'm just like, don't hardly have my wits about me. I'm just like, if that's what you think, I guess. Now I'm like horrified. I lost multiple organs that day, and I should have never agreed to that because people think the appendix has no function, but it does. I learned that now, and I'm like, ugh. So yeah, I did have an appendectomy too. Um, and yeah, didn't help. Rectal bleeding continued. I actually probably got worse after that. I think I was in a honeymoon period after I recovered from the surgery, which is interesting because as I was recovering from the surgery, I was very much just in my bed in my house, not going anywhere, not going to other people's homes, not going out to my barn, not taking care of my animals. So if I was doing better, it was probably because of that more than anything. Because once I started getting back to like life again, bam, avalanche hit me again. So yeah, by that fall, I literally had been down to like 98, 99 pounds as a grown adult woman, um, malnourished, constant bleeding. I was I was just so hopeless. I don't even know. I can't even describe the level of despair I was in and the mental anguish because I felt like I exhausted every option. And um, they did end up telling me that they would probably call me like having subclinical colitis. All my symptoms matched it, but like there wasn't pathology to confirm it. So, um, yeah, and I started having stuff with my eyes, like extreme sensitivity, redness, just like zapping pains in my eyes. It's just like more and more things kept piling on. And this is when I was at peak one day. I was over there for PEMF where we were doing that just to try and help my pain. Um, and I just happened to be sitting there talking to Buddy and just I was so strict about my diet at that point. I kind of always have been, but I was very strict at that point. And I knew with certainty that because I was always thinking it's something I'm eating because it's my GI system that's affected so severely. But I was like, I know I didn't eat anything that would have triggered this recent flare that I'm in right now. And I'm in so much pain and I'm bleeding and all these things. And Buddy finally asked me where I had been lately, like just thinking more along the lines of like, okay, if it wasn't something you ate that caused this flare, then maybe it's somewhere that you have been. And then I mentioned being at my family member's very, very, very old home. And then he's like, oh, we should test you for mycotoxins. And I was like, okay, why not? What else can you throw in? Let's do it all. I'm like so game for any ideas you have at this point. And then the only picture that has showed up so far, those were my results that I got back. And I think it was very hard for me to believe that all of this could potentially be caused by mold and mycotoxins. That was a very new concept to me. But this was like the only test in all of these years that I had gotten back that I felt like showed something. Like it wasn't like, oh, your results are like kind of unremarkable, Laura. Things look normal. This is like no, this is not normal. This is like a big red flag.
I don't
Um,
think I've seen one this bad yet, other
yeah.
than yours. I have to talk to Kristen because she looks at most of them now herself. Yeah, I'll have to look at yours with her and see if she's seen any this bad. I haven't seen any personally.
Well, my 14-year-old, he's the only one that lived in the really bad house with me, and his gliotoxin level was like triple what mine is at here. So his levels weren't as high across the board, but he did have a very high level, and he's been affected too.
And
So
let me just clarify that. So this is a mycotoxin antibody test. So it's your immune system response to mycotoxins. So it's not levels. So like some people, like we have one patient in particular where her husband was pretty bad, really high. Hers was like nothing was high, like maybe in like the 2+ section, not the 4+ section. And after digging into it, what happens is when someone's exposed for a long time and they're severe, you can actually almost get like immune exhaustion where it'll produce high levels of antibodies initially, but then once it's like that for a long time, it essentially gets burnt out and it gets depleted. So one thing that if I knew what I knew now, I'd go back and test. So you can test total immunoglobulins. So these are IgGs, IgEs, and chances are her levels would probably be low for everything, like total, not just against mycotoxins. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that because some people say, well, my levels aren't that high. If I'm detoxing and they're lower, doesn't mean I'm getting rid of it. It's no, your immune response is just calming down, and it can persist for up to 6 months, which is why nowadays we might be switching over to more urine based because we can see high levels coming out in the urine, and then as the person detoxes and reduces their exposure, then they'll see less and less. Or alternatively, you won't see much, but then you start the detox process and then it might go up when we test it a few months later. Eventually it goes back down because, which we'll talk about your results in a second, some people can't detox well. So it may not remove, your body may not be removing it. And that's why it builds up inside your body and can be stored in fat cells, can be stored in other tissues. So it won't necessarily be filtered out through the blood, through the kidneys into the urine. But anyway,
yeah. So, and when I got these results back again, I remember I was on a call, I think, with Liana, and I was like, I don't know, but would that really cause this, Liana? And she was like, I think it would. Like, I think it could. This is the only thing you've had so far that is a plausible explanation. And when you do, I dug into reading extensively now, but even just at a surface level, when you start to read about some of the effects of some of these toxins on your system, like the T2 toxin specifically is one of them, that one of the symptoms is intestinal hemorrhage. And that was like, okay, okay, maybe there's something here. But me, I'm so jaded at this point in like my health journey that I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to like buy into this. And what if this isn't it? And I was also still breastfeeding. So that was like, I couldn't start a detox yet for this. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to treat my life almost like an experiment and just really pay attention to my environment and try and start looking at things through that lens. So until I could stop or slow down breastfeeding and be able to do more in the way of detox, I thought I'm just going to really try and get myself to trust that this is it. So I don't know that I would say I recommend doing this, but for me, this is what I chose to do. I decided to eat the same thing every single day of my life, which is I do still eat almost the same way, like sort of modified carnivore. But I thought if I eat this like low inflammatory, same thing everyday diet, I can put it out of my head that there's no way that this is being triggered by food. So I'm like eliminating variables. I'm just going to eat the same thing every day, even through the holidays and everything. I was very committed. So I did that. And then I was really able to trust my body that, like, okay, around Christmas, went to my family members' homes, super sick, super sick. I was in this 200-year-old house again, super sick after that. Um, my husband and I worked in our barn for quite a few hours one day, just sorting through old wood and stuff. So incredibly sick within like 3 hours of doing that, like massive rectal bleeding, felt like I was poisoned. Um, but I literally, I don't know, it wasn't enough for me yet. I had to do this for like 3 or 4 months. Um, but there was like really like a white flag moment in March of 2025, earlier this year, where I was at my family member's home. And I was just, I mean, I think all of these exposures over the winter, and this was like a big one. I was there for probably like 8 or 9 hours, um, like an all day family thing. And I was wrecked by the time I got home. I was up all night, severe intestinal pain, tons of blood, almost like clotting stuff coming out of me. It was very scary. I was very, very sick. And I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I know this is what it is. I don't need to test this anymore. And that's, yep, that was the point I got to. And then I really dove into all of this. I started testing my home, my environment. I got a mold dog. I had inspections done. I had our HVAC disassembled. Um, as it turns out, I'm actually having another IEP come this week. I have him coming on Wednesday because I really want someone that I feel like I trust. I've been talking to him for months and he's in the area, so he's going to come by and just
Who is that? Do you mind sharing?
his name is John. He's from Alpha Air. He's based out of Pittsburgh, but he does travel all around. He's in Nazareth right now doing a week-long remediation job, and so he's going to swing by. I really, really trust him. He's reviewed all of my test results, like on my body and my home, the ones I have done so far, and he's sort of been a voice of reason for me in trying to make decisions with what to do or not do about my house, because we have not found any significant issues in my home itself. But as you learn about mold and mycotoxins, and just knowing that if you've lived in a moldy home and you bring all your contaminated stuff into the next home, you could likely just keep reacting because of the mycotoxin contamination. So, just moving the moldy furniture in from my barn like it was nothing, and all the stupid things that I did, not knowing, and living on a farm. And like now I've connected so many things. I cannot go in my chicken coop. I had to stop doing that. That was triggering me. I had to stop um, going in our hay box and doing certain things with our animals. I can't go in our barn. All of that stuff was triggering me in a major way. So I think this has been my theory so far. I've seen a lot of recovery. I'm doing so much better. I should mention that probably. I in May of 2025, um, because I started doing like mold avoidance and like I'm not going to that family member's home anymore. I'm not going in our barn anymore. I identified some major big triggers and I'm like, I'm not doing that stuff anymore. I stopped bleeding rectally for the first time in 6 years. And I am now, whatever month we're in, October,
Hmm.
hasn't come back since I've been strictly avoiding mold. And there's a lot of things I've done. I did throw away a lot of furniture. Uh, my husband probably thought I was nuts at first. I'm like, we have to throw out everything. We have to throw out the couches, the mattresses. Um, I I did get sucked into the fear a little bit at first. Now I try and be a lot more level-headed about my decisions, but it was once I knew that this was affecting me, it was like, oh my gosh, I have to save myself, throw it all out. So yeah, I've actively been practicing mold avoidance, I like to say, not because I'm like terrified of mold, but just because I really feel like I need to give my body like time to calm down. It's obviously been in a very inflamed state and constantly been being hit by these mycotoxin exposures that have just continued to trigger these like cascades of cytokine storms and all the things. So I really find that just paying attention to my environment. I'm literally not going to like stores or anything. I'm very disciplined. As I said, I go 100% in and I really want to understand my triggers better. So I'm trying to give my body like a blank slate to start from. Like I'm not going to stores, restaurants, I'm not going to family members' homes. And this has also allowed me to try and understand if my home is safe, like if I'm really only in my home. I work from home, so I'm here like all the time. But if I'm only here and I start to improve, then I can feel more confident that like, okay, my space here is good. And it was my farm that was driving a lot of the continued inflammation and family members' homes and other things. So
And the hope is, and the expectation is that as you heal, so your toxic buckets, so to speak, were full and overflowing for many years. So as you detox, drain those, calm down your system, calm down your immune system. So those antibodies on that antibody test, so they're all like really active. They're ticked off. So you're exposed to anything, they are reacting pretty severely. Um, but with time, as your body heals, then you should be able to tolerate those exposures and build back that immune tolerance, they call it.
yeah, that's the hope. I have not, obviously we don't live like in a sterile environment. I know I get hit with exposures. I take my daughter to horse lessons. That's always a thing. And I have noticed because I have started a protocol to be detoxing this stuff. And I've noticed I can tell when I have exposure now because I will still get intestinal pain. I don't bleed anymore, but I get the same exact pain that I've had for years. Um, and I will get sometimes a feeling of like a little bit of fogginess, but since doing detox, it's not nearly as severe. Like I used to feel
Mhm.
like I couldn't even speak or like drive a car safely, which sounds crazy, but now when I get hit, I can drive a car. I'm not like completely laid out from it. I'm aware of it and it's uncomfortable, but it's not debilitating like it used to be. So I know I'm on the right path. Yeah.
Let's dive in. I think the next slide is some of those test results that we've been working on. And so I could speak to some of these.
Yeah.
So one of these, and a lot of these are stuff that Laura asked to do, and I think we pretty much had it nailed what we needed. Um, but in her journey and sharing with others and looking at all the information on the internet that's out there on this, she wanted to test her sinuses. So we did a swab a couple weeks ago for MARCoNS, which is a antibiotic resistant type of staph infection. And it's very commonly seen in people that are dealing with mycotoxin illness. And for whatever reason, I think there's endotoxins involved that's released by that bacteria. It can cause a lot of inflammation, especially that brain fog and fatigue. And so she was positive. So tell us about that, like what you felt there. And we actually started a sinus rinse with colloidal silver in it, and I think you noticed some changes there, right?
Yeah. So the reason that I felt, well, of course, I've made friends in this space who are going through the same thing, and a lot of them have been tested for MARCoNS, so it was on my radar. But once I started some of the detox stuff I was doing, I started getting pressure like in my sinuses, which isn't, I didn't, I, when I lived in the bad mold house initially, I did get a lot of sinus infections, but over the last few years, I wouldn't have made like complaints about my sinus stuff. So it was like, well, this is weird. Why am I getting all this sinus pressure when I'm starting detox? And it kind of was like, okay, we should probably maybe test for that MARCoNS thing in case that's like at play. And yep, since no, we haven't started, there's other things you can do to treat this, which we will do. I'm not there yet. It's like a phase thing, but just doing the colloidal silver and I do the X Clear, which it has xylitol in it too. Just starting to do some of that stuff. I think that has been some of my most major relief with like the brain fog and neurological stuff and even like the eye stuff. I really have seen major improvements. I'm so excited. I feel like I feel pretty normal. Like I don't want to jinx it. I hate to say this because sometimes then it will come back a little bit, but I've been feeling really good the last few weeks. Just like I feel like myself again. Like my personality is coming back. Like I feel like a little bit, I don't know, like I'm getting my sparkle back. And a lot of it is that like mental thing that whatever's going on in there was really screwing me up. So super exciting to see this progress happening. And we didn't even fully treat it yet, so it's only going to get better. So I'm excited about that one.
Then the other tests we did some genetic testing called HLA haplotypes. So we get a gene from each parent, and we get a pair of jeans. And what happens, so jeans are instructions for the body to do stuff, to make, if the instructions are to make blonde hair, we make blonde hair. If it's to, and in this case, it's how well are those instructions for detoxification. So to build the enzymes and build the metabolic pathways to break down toxins. So it's often people will have issues when they have one copy of the bad gene, and Laura lucked out from mom and dad and got two copies of the bad genes. So that means she doesn't detox very well. So that's why she can live at home with everyone else and they're seemingly fine. I think some others are showing some symptoms, but like her husband's fine. And I hear this all the time that, hey, you say that it's mold, but everyone else in the house is fine. So what's the deal? It can't be that, is actually what they say. And the deal is that if you have one or more or two copies of these variants, you don't detox well, that's going to build up in your system over time. And it's often the woman too. It's often mom because she's at home with the kids and dad gets to leave the house and work outside the house. So he's exposed a lot less. But yeah, having some abnormal copies or the suboptimal copies of these genes can make it really hard to detox. So that's what Laura was dealing with, and probably why she was more susceptible than most in her life. That's why her family member could live in that farmhouse, and Laura is wrecked when she visits for a couple hours. So yeah, we saw that, and we usually don't test for it because some of this testing can get quite expensive. So for that genetic test alone, it's probably a couple $100 along with some of the other, it's called shoemaker markers. And and that's where we try to balance it with like, okay, we kind of know what we're dealing with, so we don't have to get these things, especially if the resources are limited to begin with. But Laura was curious and she wanted to have all the testing done, which is great because now we see all the stuff that I mean, it's just all the tests point to one thing now, so it's undeniable that that's what you have. And it's tough with testing too, and it's difficult for us, and why most conventional doctors don't believe in mycotoxin illness because there is no gold standard tests that are accepted by the big organizations, whether it's the CDC or the American College of Family Medicine Practitioners and on all of those other alphabet soup organizations that really set the standards for medicine. So that's why we have to do some of the detective work and use a variety of things. So we're even going to implement the visual contrast scale. So that's something you can take online. And if something's blurred, then okay, that's a positive result versus seeing two individual lines. Um, Not well researched and not validated technically, but mold practitioners that use it tend to see well that's abnormal in their patients that also test positive for mold mycotoxin antibodies or the urine test, or they get treated for mold and they get better, or they have known exposure. So yeah, taking that by itself, and I see practitioners all the time, and I felt the same way up until about a month ago, to be honest. It's like, how can that test possibly be useful? And there's not a lot of good research on it. But when you use them all together, well, now it starts to give you that big picture. And again, it's questioning the person. What are their exposures? Do they feel worse after exposures? The genetic testing, the other blood work, the visual contrast scale, the Lyme testing, and when you put it all together, it really all points to the same thing. And then I think you can trust it.
Yeah, I personally needed all of the tests because, again, I've been sick, declining for like literally 12 years. And it's just hard to believe that, like, oh my gosh, this could be the end. Like, I could be close to the finish line. I need to know for sure. Like, I need to be 1,000% sure. And I'm also just, yeah, it's all super interesting to me. So I just wanted to waste money on all the extra tests.
Not a waste, not a waste, an investment in yourself. The iGenX test, and that's not one that we run often because that is quite pricey as well. It's over $1,000, and but it does all of the tick-borne diseases because you might be negative for Lyme proper as it's tested by the CDC and by your conventional medical clinics. And I don't know if we did that regular test on you. Do you remember if we did that or not? And how did
I
you
did the
test?
regular insurance covered Western blot and I was negative on that.
So she was negative on that, but then we got the iGenX test back, and you tested positive for a few different tick-borne or tick-related diseases. One being Borrelia, which is, I believe, associated with, there's a lot of them, but I think that's associated with neurological issues as well. So she was positive. And that's something that we will, as she alluded to earlier, we need to phase things in because you can't address everything at once. The steps usually go to stabilize, so get out of the exposure, start to really gently detox, but not much, and using things like magnesium, and there's some other supplements we can use to calm down the immune system and calm down that mast cell activation or that histamine response. And then once we do that, the next step is to start more heavily detoxing the mold and treating the mold and treating the sinuses. And then third, we come back in and look at some of these co-infections. And uh, a lot of times we see this in mycotoxins. We see tick-borne disease associated with it or viral infections that are active because the immune system is such under such stress from the mycotoxins that it can't fight those things off. I think most of us are exposed to these things all the time, whether it's through a spider bite, an insect bite of any kind. It doesn't just have to be ticks. And a healthy immune system is going to pretty much fight it off and take care of it. But because of the mycotoxins, it's living under the surface, it's smoldering. It's not so obvious that anyone thinks to check for it, or we do check for it, and it shows up as negative because it's the wrong test, in my opinion, or it's not as sensitive enough. So yeah, eventually we'll go back through. And for Laura, it was tick-borne disease. For someone else, it could be Epstein-Barr virus or CMV, cytomegalovirus. There's a variety of herpes viruses, not the STD kind, but just other types of herpes viruses. But eventually, those will all have to be addressed as well to get complete improvement resolution.
Yep. That's that's like the end of what I have. I did include this just maybe for anybody who's watching back or just to see all of the symptoms and all of the tests and procedures I've had over the last 12 years. I already covered most of this, but um it's a lot. When I was writing this all out last night, I'm like reading them off to my husband, like going through the list. I'm like, this is like what all I've been dealing with. Is this not like a little insane? Like, this is insane. This is crazy that I lived like this for so many years. So a lot of
Yeah.
these are already gone. So it's super exciting.
Yeah. And now on my calls, like I can almost spot mycotoxin related illness a mile away because I'll look at their intake form before that free call, and when they list they've seen like 6+ different medical specialists ranging from rheumatology for autoimmune to endocrinology for thyroid to OBGYN for female hormonal issues to neurology for neurological symptoms to GI. And it's like, okay, what I usually let them share their story for a few minutes first and then say, "Did any possibility of mold exposure? Do you have a damp basement?" And nine or maybe 10 times out of 10, they say, "Well, yeah, we did have mold a couple of years ago, and my husband took care of it, or we had a contractor come in and then just basically painted over it with Kills paint and all this other stuff." And then get into the difficult conversation of, yeah, it could be mold related, and here's all the steps that we're going to need to take. But yeah, it can be quite a bit. But thank you, everyone. You're still on. You're still with us. So please ask questions. Laura's here with us, and do you have about 10 more minutes, Laura?
Yep, I got all the time.
All right. So if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to raise your hand, or you can type in the comments. I do have a few comments here. So yeah, I will get that contact information for your inspector. And if you don't mind messaging for me or give me his information, because if he's in the area and he has time, I want to have my house checked because I know I have mold. And I tested positive for mycotoxins in my urine. I have positive antibody tests, and I've always had. So I feel better than I've had in many years, the past few months, and it's because I've been eating chlorella like their candy, and I've been doing a lot of biotoxin binder, the cell core. So I got the powder stuff, and I just dump it into some water with electrolytes and just sip at it. Tastes like garden soil, or what I imagine garden soil tasting like. But yeah, I've just been feeling a lot better lately. And then my HVAC guy came a few months ago, and he saw visible mold in the unit that's underneath our crawl space. We have one up in the ceiling for that side of the house, and then one underneath where it's damp. And I know I had a water line to my old fridge when we remodeled the kitchen. The contractor just basically capped it, and it was hanging there underneath the floorboards. And then it started dripping at some point. I don't know how long, but it was drip, 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 pretty steady. So I hope I caught it quickly enough, but guaranteed I do because I tested it, and I do have lots of mold spores in the home. Not a whole lot of mycotoxins, which is a good sign, but he said that the type of mold that I had can change. So just turning the heat on or when it gets cold in the winter, that could trigger the mold to get a little antsy and start to give off those mycotoxins. So yeah, I definitely want to have something there done there. And I want to have someone that I can trust, someone that's good, because there's a lot of, I wouldn't say they're not legit, they just don't know what they don't know, and they'll put plates out. You're gonna get mold to grow. Like it's in the air. You open the windows, you get outdoor air. You're gonna get mold to grow on those mold plates. You let bread out long enough, it's gonna get moldy. So there's mold spores all over the place, but it's the type that matters, and then are there mycotoxins? And I think the best way to screen for that is the swab kit that we use through US Biotech. But if you know you have visible molds, you're probably just better off just skipping that step and going right to the inspector because they know all the spots to check, the conditions. It's not the mold itself, but it's the conditions that allow the mold to grow. So Deanna's on here and she shared her story last time where she had some air leaks in the HVAC system, which is causing condensation, which was causing moisture. She found out that the neighbor's wall was infecting her space because she's in a condo. And so there's just so many variables where you really need to have an inspector come in and yeah, you're going to pay a decent amount. Probably a good inspector is going to charge at least 12 to 1500. Does that sound right, Laura?
Yeah, I think I think he usually charges around like his fee for himself is around $500, and then it's like whatever testing needs to be done,
Right,
swabs or certain amounts. So I would say that's probably a fair ballpark.
right, right. All right, looks like we got a question here. Is there a link checklist of how to handle mold in new houses other than kills it paints? Something for people new to this and skeptical. So yeah, kills as from everything I read, painting over it's not gonna do the job. And then so have you heard much about that, Laura? Like I'm pretty sure painting is known not to do the trick.
No painting. Nope. No
Yep,
painting.
can't just paint over. It'll bleed right through it. Um, Proac, she charged 2000 for a full house 8 hour inspection. So they're very thorough. So Proac I really like too. They're located down in Berks County, and I've talked to that owner and grilled him with all the questions, and it sounds like they're legit and they know how to do it too. Um, and also ask, will all inspectors remediate accurately? So, done right, the inspector should not be the contractor, and vice versa, because there's a conflict of interest there. They usually get a third party, or the inspector writes up the report for a contractor to follow. And then you have to find a contractor that is mold literate, so they know what they're working with and that they can take that report. So you'd have to show them the report. Usually they're 20 to 30 pages long, if I understand that correctly. And it has instructions for how to do negative air pressure. So as they're taking apart walls, that the air is getting sucked out and you're not just infecting the entire house when they're disturbing the mold. And then you want the inspector to come in after the fact and then approve their work. So there should be, I don't know how many contractors will do this around here, but the contractor should be willing to say, like, yeah, we'll give you a price, we'll do this. And if it doesn't pass the post work inspection, then we got to fix it on our dime. I haven't had that negotiation with anyone yet, so I don't know. But in an ideal world, that's what they would agree to.
There are good ones that will agree to that, and there are ones that will not agree to that. So it's a very tricky situation to navigate. And I think we are working on trying to compile a list of like trusted
Yeah.
people. There's a lot of good resources out there. There's a lot of awesome creators on like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, just to be able to learn more about like the language around this stuff and what kind of things to ask an inspector or a remediator so you can try and qualify if someone actually knows what they're doing or not. So
Yeah, it's my goal to have a list of and then build that list over time is like what contractors can we contact, what inspectors are legit and can we contact and because up until now it's we were taking care of the body part of it, but the building is what we were missing here and we certainly need to have those people lined up because if you just call around like you who knows what you end up with. And not that they're trying to steal or not trying to make money off you or anything like that. It's just if they don't know what they're doing, they think they're trying to help and they think they're doing things the right way, but they're not.
yeah, I think hopefully we're going to see changes over the next few years and like even just people holding the companies to higher standards and them trying to do things in a more effective way because up until now it's been sometimes maybe even just a cosmetic thing like get rid of the mold, but
Yeah.
there is obviously it makes people very sick and there's a certain way it has to be handled properly. And I think we're on the cusp of seeing more people hopefully start to get it right.
Hopefully. And you mentioned TikTok and I check out your videos sometimes and it blows my mind that there are still like legit physicians because they have accounts and you can click on them and see that they put out education and they're working physicians that are real. They're not just bots or people trolling. And
Yep.
they will say like straight up, this doesn't exist. You're being taken advantage of.
Yep.
And people are lying to you and people are just trying to make money off you. When Laura shares, like, okay, she shares her experience in her TikTok page of and then she avoids the mold and she feels better. She exposes and it's worse. It's like, well, what else can it be, doc? But they will not cave into that. They will not accept that. I don't know why.
They think they will imply that is like in your head and you're just believing it or you're triggering, it's like your thoughts. I'm like, I don't know, man. I thought that endometriosis excision surgery and a hysterectomy would cure me. I thought that doing SIBO treatment would cure me. Like I thought these things would help me. So if it was like triggered by my mind, I would have already been cured because I thought all these things were going to help me. They
Right.
didn't. This is
Right.
the thing that's been helping. So yeah, we fight with TikTok doctors all day.
So any other questions while we have Laura here tonight? Like I said, we'll do this again in the future, and maybe next one we'll leave it more open for Q&A, and we'll spend more time doing that since we're a little over tonight. But any last questions from anyone? And while we're waiting for that, any last thoughts from you, Laura?
I don't I said a lot. I didn't even look at what time it was. I don't know how over we are. Oh, only 10
Yeah,
minutes.
10 minutes.
I
Not too
didn't
bad.
know how long that was gonna go. Sorry.
Well, thank you for sharing, and we'll refine this and we'll get the slides working and the photos, and so you can see her before and after. But go back to that first slide, actually, like what you look like when you're in the thick of it, because we can see what you look like now on the screen.
Well, like a mess.
So yeah, you can see like the eye, like the bags
My
under the eyes,
eyes,
like the dark eyes, and
dark eyes, and like one of my eyes would always I always for the past couple years I thought like that I had a really unsymmetrical face for some reason, but now that I've cleared this stuff out and been treating, I'm like, "Oh, I wasn't that's not how I looked. Like I didn't look like that. My face wasn't normal for a long time."
were you crying there, or is there just like
Yeah,
discoloration?
I was probably crying. Yes.
Okay.
Lots of crying. So much crying.
Yeah.
No more crying.
Well, thank you for sharing, and like we told you, there is a happy ending, and it's best is yet to come. There's a lot more to come. I think a lot more healing to come, but we're well on your way. We're
Yeah.
well on your way.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
all right,
you.
everyone, thanks for watching. And if you're watching the replay, if you have any questions, like always, reach out through the patient portal or email or however you can get a hold of me. And if you have any questions for Laura, I'll make sure that she gets those. And we'll see you guys next time we have one of these. All right, take care, everyone.
Bye.